Everyone, please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Ashley, can I have roll call, please?
Cavalier.
Here.
Alt. Here. Clark.
Here.
Menard.
Here.
Hibma.
Here.
Jurdy.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Briggs.
Here.
Okay, this brings us to the regular agenda. Ashley, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Item 3.01 is the first reading of an ordinance creating the City of Crookston's Housing Trust Fund.
Thank you. Tanner or Carrie's not here. Discussion on this, please.
Yes, and I just have some very basic information on this. This is a trust fund that she has talked about putting into place. It allows us to seek grants where we're putting in $1 and we're potentially getting 6 back. It's my understanding that this trust fund is going to be initially paid for by funds that Cheetah has designated. However, in order for us to be eligible for any of the grant funding, the city has to pass a grant like this, or an ordinance like this, sorry. There also is a very strict timeline on this, which is part of the reason we're having these back-to-back hearings. This is something that needs to be approved by October 1. So I think we have it on this meeting, the next meeting for the public hearing, and then the 30th for the final approval. But anything else?
Thank you.
You need a motion?
No motion. First, introducing the first
Oh,
reading.
that's right.
So,
Discussion.
any further discussion? Okay, moving on.
Item 3.02 is a resolution calling for the public hearing with respect to adopting the city code regarding creating the City of Crookston Housing Trust Fund.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll
Got
second.
Don and Tim, thank you. Discussion. Jeff, anything to add?
Nothing to add. This, as Tanner had mentioned, the Cheetah Board has already voted to dedicate funds for the trust fund. So this would, as we move forward with this, it will enable us to get the state matching funds moving forward.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Just wanted to relay, the public hearing would be at the next city council meeting, regular meeting at, that is September 23rd at 5:30.
Thank you. All right, hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Cavalier.
Aye.
Alt. Aye. Clot.
Aye.
Menard.
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Jurdy.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 3.03 is the first reading of an ordinance amending section 30.02 B and C of the City of Crookston's city code.
Okay, this is the first reading of this ordinance with discussion. Tanner, please.
Just very briefly on this one too, the reason that we're following this procedure is because we already had an ordinance and we figured we might as well do them together because they're both kind of quick. This one, the really more significant changes are in Crookston City Code 30.02.c. A few weeks ago, the city administrator and I were attempting to do some mental gymnastics to avoid having a special closed council meeting that all the department heads would have had to sit through. Given 30.02's very specific requirements of what the agenda needs to be and when things are going to be heard, we decided that maybe it would be beneficial to look at amending that and making it more general, so the city clerk is just drafting the agenda for us without all the special technicalities and requirements, and to keep it more open and hopefully quicker in the future. With that, anyone have any questions or concerns on that one?
It gives us more flexibility.
Yep, that's the only point of it, is to give us more flexibility and hopefully not spend time trying to figure out where to put in a closed meeting in the future.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Okay, was the first, introduced first reading on this ordinance.
Item 3.04 is a resolution calling for a public hearing with respect to adopting the city code regarding amending section 30.02B and 30.02C.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution? Got a motion by Tim, is there a second?
Second.
By Henry, thank you. Further discussion? Anything, Jeff?
No, Your Honor.
Okay,
Again, this will follow the same date as the first resolution that we had just passed. It will be held on September 23rd at 5:30, this starting, so.
all right, thanks, Ashley. Roll call, please.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Alt. Aye. Clot.
Aye.
Menard.
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Jerde.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Okay, motion carries. This, just a reminder, there will be a budget meeting tonight. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Mayor, prior to reconvening.
meeting to order for Monday, September 16th, 2024. Okay, Jeff.
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, you have in front of you, I've got a cover sheet that tries to break down significant changes from previous year's budgets so that we can move efficiently through the process. The first sheet that we would be looking at is this single sheet with the green revenue on top, the licenses and permits. No, I apologize. But I did not print some of the items because quite simply, if the changes are not substantial at all. The election, there is no election, so the budget for the elections line items are unchanged or actually not unchanged, they're reduced, and we are at contractual costs only. So there's not really a lot to discuss on that. Finance, we are looking at a general reduction of approximately 14%, mostly due to anticipated reduced CLA costs associated with our outside audit prep consultant, CLA. And if you wish to discuss finance, we can go over that. That should be within, and it made single-sided copies, of course it did. If we can put up the budget numbers. Thank you. For the finance department, it should be a tab at the bottom.
Do we have a printed copy of that as well, or is it just?
I thought I had printed a copy, however, it did not print two-sided, so the finance did not come across
Okay.
on the total. However, the differences in finance, let me pull up. Can you put that large on the screen, Jeannie? Thank you. The finance department, we've reduced our anticipated salaries based on Vance going to, he's half split with water, having the finance director and an accountant. Overall, all of our expenses in finance did reduce by, again, 14%. The significant portion is approximately 25% in salaries. The increase was in professional fees. I felt that CLA should be budgeted in the finance department as opposed to generalized accounting fees. It appears that there were some double codings between professional fees in a separate line item plus audit expense, and I wanted to consolidate those into this line within finance only for clarity. Previously, we had 41,000 budgeted last year. We have 100,000 budgeted this year, but that is actually a reduction from previous years when you combine the various line items. As we move through, we did have some changes with workers' comp. The actuals for some previous years were not accurate, but those are formulaic. They're based straight off of the wages. There are no capital requests for finance. And I would ask for the council direction. Currently, our current 24 budget for the finance department is 490,000. The anticipated budget for the finance department for 25 is 421,000. I would like to remind council this is a preliminary budget. There will be changes. I'm not going to say there won't be. There will be changes moving forward. This is guidance so that I can come to the council at future meeting for the preliminary budget.
What's the date we have to get the numbers to go out in the mail, the proposed?
We have to have them to the county by the 30th for the preliminary number
Of,
of September. For a preliminary budget. It's a not to exceed. We cannot exceed that budget. We can cut, but we cannot exceed that number. The real budget work begins after that point.
Yep.
That's where we begin slicing, dicing, and negotiating and working with the department heads and what is and is not in the realm of reality. I would ask if there were any questions. This is intended to be a 10,000-foot overview and not a line-by-line dissection at this juncture.
Next.
Next, the building official, as discussed, the building official, I do have information. Greg did assemble information as requested by the council previously. Currently, our permit rate is 0.9% of the permit fee of the project expectation that's separated from plumbing and regular building construction. He compared that to Greg, was it 6 or 7?
I think it's 7.
7 local cities, of which we were the lowest building rates or permit rates of that group by a significant portion, roughly 30%. Each of the other cities is growing. So one of the points that was brought up was, how do we compare next to other cities, and are they growing or are they not? Each of the other cities was growing. The percentages that we have, Thief River Falls, our rate for less than $50,000 project is 0.9%. For greater than 500,000, it's 0.45%, and greater than $1 million is 0.39%. The state surcharge is 0.05 of a percent. Our population from 2010 to 2020 dropped 5.2%. Thief River Falls charges 1.15% in the same range, 1.15, 0.58, and 0.5 for the top two. We're at 0.39 for the top two, so they're about 20% higher than us, roughly. They're growing at a 5% rate. East Grand Forks, we're eliminating from the calculation only because they don't calculate the same way we do. They have a very complex per square foot calculation formula, is what Greg identified. They have a new building official that's trying to move away from that, but as of now, it's 0.0005 per square foot. So Grand Rapids is 1.3%. And 0.65, 0.57, and 0.44. They're the closest to us at the greater than $1 million mark. We're at 0.39. They're growing at 2.4%. Warren is 1.15%, 0.58, and 0.5. Also growing at 2.8. Bemidji, 1.29%. 0.65 growing at 8.5.
so what percentage do we need to be for it to support?
To support the department?
Yes.
I don't believe that we're in a position to be able to support the department anytime soon.
Do the other cities, the 1%, are they?
I don't believe they can.
Okay.
However, to bring us more in line, I would recommend, as a recommendation for our fee schedule, when that comes up later in the budget year, I would say to match the lowest denominator among those, which would be that 1.15%.
I mean, just for argument's sake, what would the percent need to be to fund the building?
about 3.5 times what it is now,
Okay,
which would be stifling.
great.
We will be subsidizing the building department for the foreseeable future. However, we can mitigate that by coming to essentially the lowest common denominator at 1.15, 0.58, or 0.6, and then 0.5 for the above. But the actual rates will come up with the rate discussion later in the season, but I did want to have that ready for the council, and because we had the information. Detroit Lakes remarkably has the highest rates at 1.33%. They also have the highest growth rate at 15%. Wow. Over that 10-year period. So it seems that there does not appear to be a correlation with higher rates and slower growth. That being said, on the building department, switch my template. Building departments is staying relatively flat. It's a 2% increase over previous years. And the primary drivers of that increase are corrections to some of the line items. As an example, FICA contributions were correct. Actually, in building, they were fairly stable. Health insurance is fairly stable. The largest increase would be office supplies because it was minimal previous year. We had $500 and we moved to $1,000. And legal publication notices was at 800 and we put it at 1,500 this year. But those are fees that, again, we'll be addressing because most of those legal publication notices are arrived from zoning changes. And right now our zoning permit fees, or zoning application fees are extremely low compared to the costs that we incur to drive those
So
forward.
the proposed budget is at 42,650, is that correct?
For the building department?
Yeah,
No, sir. The building department, the building department is 139,876.
That's revenue, isn't it?
Yes, the 42,650 is the revenue for
Oh,
the
I
building
see.
department. And again, the zoning and special use permits,
right, so the revenue, so the 42,650, does that include your increase that you're proposing?
not at this point. I just received those this afternoon from Greg.
So,
So we could anticipate, with building permits, plan check fees, the permits, we can anticipate roughly a 20% increase in that number, so about 8,000
increase in the budget,
The revenue.
in the revenue, yes, sir.
the revenue.
And the only other change that, when it comes time to discuss the fee schedule, I will likely be asking council to adjust the zoning and special use. Greg puts 10 to 15 hours minimum into each request. And at his rate of pay, a zoning or special use request should come close to redeeming its costs. And right now we charge $200 to $250 for those services, and it's just not anywhere close. We're basically volunteering his time.
What would the cost be if
I'm going to be asking for a $2,500 fee to make a zoning change.
How many of those a year does he get?
What's that, Morgan?
How many of those requests does he get a year on average? I mean,
Right now, year to date, we have 2.
it's just zoning changes?
I'm basing that on the year to date revenue that's showing in the spreadsheet.
Okay.
But again, the building department is staying relatively flat at 2%. I am in process of adding both a revenue and an expense only for tracking purposes. The building permit surcharge right now is absorbed. And I'm going to be adding a building permit surcharge revenue line, because that is a state surcharge, that is not a city surcharge. And I'll also be adding the expense so that we can track what we receive and what we send to the state, as opposed to simply sending money to the state.
So can you explain why in 2022's actuals, like, there was a positive cash flow with a 342?
342.
For the building permit surcharge?
I can't speak to how. I believe, I would anticipate, and this is just a guess, that somebody coded what we sent to the state under a revenue
Instead of
an expense, because, and from the history that we've seen, we've never tracked that before.
Okay.
And I think in 2023, someone tried to do the right thing and track.
It just
but it
not
didn't-
correctly.
It didn't work out correctly.
So at the end of the day, with the revenues, we're still paying, it's still costing the city $97,000.
It's still, it will cost the city about 90,000 if we choose.
If you choose to up the,
If we up the fees, we would anticipate
Scale,
it's still
yeah.
costing the city about 90,000 to run the
Okay.
building department.
okay. It's something that we would progressively start to.
I don't know, based on the trends that I see in the area, whether or not we can ever get our building department self-sufficient, but it should be as a general practice.
Yeah.
You want your development to pay for itself,
Right.
but we are in a very precarious position. As Councilmember Hibma had reported last time, we wanna make sure that we're not chasing people away by being outrageously priced, which is also leans heavily into my recommendation that we not max the increase, that we match the consensus lowest number at that point.
No, that makes sense to me. I just was wondering if there was other places that we could look for as revenue, if there's some type of taxing or something outside of this that could also.
I can definitely, I can make a note for myself here that I can research that with surrounding areas and
Yeah.
surrounding cities.
I'm just wondering if there's other alternatives. Okay,
Legal is a single line item budget. Previously, in previous years, it was budgeted at $125,000 per year.
is that somewhere in here that we can look at?
It is not on the printouts. Again, I had the departments on the back side of the single sheet that only printed one side.
Okay,
I don't see it on your budget either. Is it one of these tabs?
Is it under professional services?
It sort of is, let me scroll. It is two sections under on the Excel line 286.
under which tab?
It's not on a tab, it's on budget to actual line 286.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, one more time, what was that?
286.
286?
Under professional fees, which would be our legal expense, 2022 actual was 123,000, 23 was 120,000, with 8,000 and 5,400 respectively for a substitute attorney should our city attorney not be available. Anticipating cleaning up our code, I did move that 120 to 150 for a few reasons. One, our previous administrator was a licensed attorney and was able to take on many of the responsibilities directly. However, that is no longer the case. We did maintain roughly $5,000 for a substitute attorney. Both of these fees were in discussion with our city attorney to ensure that they were reasonable considering the workload that we anticipate for next year.
Is there a reason there was no current budget?
I can't speak to what was written last year, ma'am.
I am just surprised there wasn't something budgeted for this. Like, I feel like we saw something budgeted for this.
Yeah, we have incurred 59,000 year to date in the current budget year. Plus
And it's just
11.
that are you not finding any information on it, or like,
The sheets that, this is a printout directly from our accounting software.
okay,
So if it were budgeted and entered into the accounting software, it would be present on these line items. I have not identified any other line items where this would have been budgeted.
okay.
So again, legal, we are. So I can't speak to what the increase is on this particular line item because there is no comparable line item. It is approximately a 30,000 increase over 23.
So if we have a year-to-date of approximately 71,000, we don't really know what to compare that to as far as the current budget.
That is correct, sir.
We can only look at 22 and 23.
Yeah, I would say that it does appear to be slightly lower than 22 and 23 on a 3/4 of the way through the year.
Okay.
It appears to come in, that it will come in roughly 98,000 if it trends consistent with where it has so far. Our city hall expense. City hall expense, the salaries are contractually identified by the union contract. The only salary that I have listed there is our janitorial. The FICA, Medicare, para is all mathematical. Health insurance, again, is a share. It is a shared expense between departments.
Are we still on
Janitorial,
the same page?
I should.
Still tab?
Pardon?
You're talking about city hall expenses, are you still
City
on the
hall
same-
expenses,
Is that still in the budget to actual?
but yes, ma'am.
What
Line
is it?
item 415.
415.
The only significant change dollar wise, there. Janitor supplies is 3,000 as opposed to 2,000 because it combined from account 217. 217 and 213, janitor supplies and miscellaneous in the current budget combined to be 3,500. I combined those together, made them 3,000, put them in janitor supplies. As I've mentioned before, I do not budget miscellaneous because if I can name it, I can categorize it and I can put it into its proper place. And based on the trend analysis between those two, I felt comfortable with a reduction in that combined amount by 500. Another significant change is workers' compensation. Our workers' comp costs throughout have historically not been overly accurate. And upon research, I found that there was an unusual, and I believe we touched base on this at the last budget meeting, there was an unusual allocation used, and when Kathy left the city, there was no one there to then accrue the monthly accruals, so our year-to-date in 23 and 24 never got accomplished, and it hung out in a different fund. So that being said, the number, it shows a 525% increase by calculation. That is not accurate. I just, based on what I've seen on the workers' comp invoices, it stays, this particular line is very similar to previous years' actual expenses. The only other line item that we have that is a change, I am asking the council for a $75,000 capital contribution for City Hall. The reason that I'm asking for this, and I've spoken with the chief, and currently our City Hall is wide open, and as we've seen throughout the country, we don't live in the same era that it used to be. And while I hesitate to speak on security measures in a public forum, anyone who's been in our City Hall sees its layout. We open the front door, we have the back door open both for customer service, and there are no walls to block and protect our staff. I'm asking for $75,000 to build walls around Tina's station to create doorways to access the operational areas of City Hall and secure them. So that in the event of an event, in the case of an event, we have the ability to secure our staff and evacuate through the back and make the front area and make the lobby area accessible only from the front.
Is that based on any quotes that you've received, or?
I have not received any quotes. It's a general discussion with building official. We have looked at reaching out to some contractors to find out some quotes. This would not be connected to ceiling structure. This would simply be
That's under
within
other equipment, right?
it should be other improvements
Other equipment is where it is.
other improvements is where it actually belongs.
So we'll move it up.
I can move that up. And at that juncture, we can then have two sets of doors in our lobby to access the back operational areas. There are groups called First Amendment auditors. They'll come in with a cell phone and start walking around anywhere that they can get to. And this is just a way to secure and protect our citizens. It is something that I really would like the council to consider moving forward. If the council chooses not to fund it, we can remove it after. Again, this is a not to exceed budget, but if I don't present it, we can't discuss it later.
Sounds good.
Other than that, City Hall expenses stays pretty consistent and stable with previous. Lowell? Next item that I have is the airport. That is scrolled way down because that has about 20, account line number 2100 roughly. Again, this is one of those this is one of those departments. The airport expenses and the airport budget, both revenue and expenses, is generally flat. There is an addition of 35,000 for a capital improvement schedule that was already slated for next year. That is that's the increase that we have in that budget. That 35,000 is for a 2.5% local match for the hangar project. Basically, we're getting 1.4 Lowell?
Yep, 1/4.
$1.4 million building for a $35,000 match, which will then become revenue producing. So we will get our money back on that match. I'd say probably within a year to 2 years, Lowell. Would you say that's fair?
I believe when we figured that project changed a little bit from like a 10 unit to 6, and I think it was around 4 years.
4 years.
They figured earlier.
But as Lowell and I went through, most everything stayed flat. The changes in this department are basically from line item to line item as we
Hey, Jeff,
put more appropriate items in. Yes?
sorry to interrupt. What spreadsheet is, or what line is this on?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what line?
What line item are you looking
Yeah,
at?
what Excel number?
I can't find it either.
The airport is 2100. 2114 is the first line of the revenue.
It's on TV now.
2114 says miscellaneous.
So my 2114 says miscellaneous revenue.
2114 should be intergovernmental revenue, miscellaneous revenue 2129.
The sheet online for 2129 is,
It's in Fund 227, the first column is 227.
okay.
I'm sorry, Lowell, 229? I apologize.
229, yeah.
2174. Revenues include 30,000 in state revenue, which fluctuates budget year to budget year. That is a reduction of 25%. Miscellaneous revenues come in at 103,510. I'm on line 2207 with miscellaneous revenues. Our line items for revenues in this department, really we did just, for the most part, copy across from previous years. Most of them are very stable. We have 135,000 in non-departmental revenue. That composes of rent from the farmland, hangar garage rentals, airport shop rental, and 30,000 maintenance from the state. That state did reduce from the current budget by about $10,000. Our expenditures, we wages was 3%, just, I penciled a 3% increase on the wages. I maintained the same temporary salaries as the last budget. FICA and Medicare para was all a formulaic contribution. Office supplies, laundry, gasoline, oil, laundry went up 50%, but office supplies went down 50%. The janitorial supplies went down 17% anticipated, as did repairs equipment went down 11%. There are no significant changes in dollars throughout the airport budget. We do have $135,000 in capital. Has to do with the hangar sheeting, T-hangers, seal coating the entrance, the match for the cone and crack sealing. Our total airport expense comes to $311,800. That total includes, that is a 25% increase, however, that includes a significant increase in that capital with the T-hangers and the match, or the match for the T-hangers, the hanger sheetings. As we move down and we get, if you were to take that out, that then lowers that down back to where the previous year was. In the current budget is a $35,000 city contribution. The proposed budget is a $41,000 city contribution after the removal of the capital request. Are there any questions on the airport? The next, we do have the handout. It has the blue tab on the top.
Yeah, this is it.
For police. Overall, the police department, Darren has information to move forward on this. However, overall, the police department, we are, as the council is aware, we are in contract negotiations for both police and fire. The primary drivers of the 17.8% increase in the police department includes $137,000 in capital requests and an anticipated increase in wages and other affiliated costs such as para, FICA, with the union negotiations moving forward. The capital request, 27,000 in building and structures, 70,000 for motor vehicles, 5,000 for other equipment, and 5,000 for office equipment and furnishings, and 35,000 for other equipment. With that, I will leave it to the chief to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess I can just start out with revenues. Revenues for, from 24 to 25 are relatively the same. We might see some slight increases on some state reimbursement that we receive. Those numbers aren't officially in, but I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Again, it's almost an identical copy of last year.
Am I not reading this right? It looks like there's no fines for tobacco compliance or alcohol compliance? Or is that being put somewhere else?
Alcohol, so tobacco and alcohol compliance, the fines, yeah, we haven't initiated any fines on that in several years. Typically how we've taken that approach is, we've done an educational approach to tobacco and alcohol compliance. Per the city ordinance, we check them twice a year. But typically what we've done is just an educational approach with them.
And that's for the, like, people who are underage that are drinking? Or is it like compliance with
That would be like,
restaurants?
that would be the local retail stores that would sell
Okay.
alcohol or tobacco to underage individuals. I was gonna say minors, but I think it's 21 years of age now, that most of that is, so they would be adults, so. And there's not a state statute that we follow with that. Typically it would be an ordinance, which would be a civil offense for that. And again, just be good partners with our local businesses and the revolving staff that they have. Most of them are very good and very much in compliance. If we do get a violation, it's hardly any at all, and we take an educational approach to that.
How many educational approaches do they get before you would consider a fine?
You know, typically we don't have any violations, but I mean, we have fined in the past, absolutely, and typically how that works is the fine is, there's two sides of it. It's incurred by the business, but typically it's the employee that sells it that gets the fine. So a lot of that isn't really generated back on the business. We write letters explaining that this individual sold, whether it's, and alcohol is very rare, if any, usually it's tobacco. And say that the person working there, the employee sold tobacco to a minor, and they're unfortunately, the ones who get the fines typically lose their job, and the business often just gets a letter saying that they violated. The revenue on that would be hundreds of dollars, if any. It would not be a large revenue on that. Any other questions on revenue by chance?
Chief Seltzer,
Yes.
would we need to add a line item for compliance regarding the sale of THC products?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. Yeah.
But if you're, just double check here, if we're not charging them and we're taking an educational approach, why would we add a line item if we're not gonna charge anyone?
And you know, that I think would definitely be a next year approach on any compliance checks. You know, they're still scheduled at first year to possibly even have dispensaries, but
So
I
would
know
you
we're
find
seeing
them or use them as educational approaches?
haven't done marijuana compliance checks.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, would you guys treat that like an alcohol or tobacco, or would you actually treat that differently?
You know, I think to stay consistent, especially to start out, I mean, I think we take that same approach.
Okay.
On expenditures, I can just go through what I was gonna just kind of pick a few that there was some increases in. Again, if there's something else that you'd like me to discuss in greater detail, I'm happy to do that. Like Jeff earlier pointed out, salaries, you know, we put kind of, for lack of a better word, best case or worst case scenario for what salaries might appear like through some of the initial asks from the union. Obviously, negotiations haven't officially started. They've made contact or arrangements with Jeff even for the first negotiation this week. There was an informal one last week, so I could see that number would obviously change at the start of the budget. I guess I just put in their first ask.
Can I ask just, on a side note, I know that, we did not that long ago, a competitive pay research and that we were upping salaries based on that. Do you not feel that we're competitive again?
No, there's two things on that, if you wanna call it, the wage study or what was conducted by the prior HR, manager. It was incomplete, the data was incorrect for the police department for sure. I think other departments it might have been more accurate, but it was a lot of those data that we received from that was old information.
Okay.
And the last raise that the union got was, appreciated, certainly substantial, but it didn't really put us back on the table. Everybody else, in our comparisons in the area, we are substantially less than anyone else.
And would you say in the last year that we've lost a significant amount of people based on wages?
I wouldn't say that in the last year, but we have lost employees for wages, yes.
Yeah. Cause when would we do that update? Wasn't that within the last year?
I was gonna say 2 years ago, yep, exactly. It was 2 years ago that the last contract, that was where the wage study or internal wage study, informal wage study was performed, yeah.
So as adding additional officers, has that decreased the overtime budget?
It has, and I would argue that that's probably one of the number one driving factors on why we're not losing staff. It's not the pay, it's the scheduling and the ability that we've had to do, or that we've been able to have with adding 2 officers. The overtime, yes, it has been reduced, however, we have had some critical incidents and other events occur this summer that were out of our control that have cost significant overtime. The overtime is also deceiving in the fact that it doesn't reflect the state and federal reimbursement money that we do receive for that. That is a deceiving number, but our overtime has been substantially down this year.
And are you fully staffed now?
We are. We have been fully staffed for about a year.
So are we doing another wage study?
To my knowledge, there isn't one in the near future.
So when you say inaccurate, it was just,
I can only speak on behalf of the police department, and the numbers that they used for that was old data.
Wasn't that data we got from the League of Minnesota Cities?
It was, a lot of that was taken off that website, but we were able to, what we did versus the data off of the actual website that he located, when I was in a budget meeting, if you wanna call it that, or a meeting with him, with the time, the data they pulled up was inaccurate. I followed through and called those agencies and got updated numbers, and I did relay that back to the city, but the information was off about 6 to 8%.
What you generally will find is a state database such as the League of Minnesota Cities and these items, they're going to be behind the curve to some extent in that reporting.
And it was the most current data that they had at the time, it's just we didn't follow through with checking that.
I mean, why can't you just, why, not to say that he should have done, but why can't you just call our local police agencies and see where they're at compared to, instead of.
Well, and that's what we've done, and that's what the union's done, we have all that data and everything to reference, Northwest Minnesota and other areas, salaries and everything right now. And again, we're very appreciated, we're not saying that it wasn't appreciated, it was very helpful, but unfortunately, we are still quite weak.
So you found that, you didn't know that at the time of the budget last year? Did you know that it was probably incorrect? When we did
I honestly, Delaney, I can't remember if it was before or after we signed the contract, I apologize for that.
Okay. Thank you.
The other line item that I was gonna discuss is building repairs and maintenance. I don't know exactly what number it is on your spreadsheet, but it's the last 4 of the 0222. So it'll be 10142 110 0222. That one, I have put in a request from $7,000 to $10,000 last year. In prior years, our building repairs and maintenance budget was at that $9,000 to $10,000. In an effort to try to cut costs, last year I did reduce it to 7,000. However, since then again, increased costs and maintenance. We added 2 HVAC units with the garage upgrade. And the breakdown of my annual maintenance costs that are, if you wanna call fixed or built-in costs, are right around that $9,000 or $8,900, leaving about $1,000 or $1,100 for incidental. So we will, I don't know that we'll be over this year, but it's gonna be close. So that would be the increase for that request.
So can I just ask really quick, that's under, buildings and
repairs.
structures?
Building repairs and maintenance.
0222.
What is building and structures?
Building and structures, what did you say?
It's 0520.
Oh, that would be a capital improvement. When you're looking at the 520 building and structure, that's a capital improvement expenditure if we're gonna do any upgrades or improvements to the building. This is, this line item that I'm talking about is 101 42110 0221.
Okay.
So Chief, we put 40,000 in last year into your capital improvements for vehicles, right?
Correct.
And so is that still there?
Yes, you're about 2 ahead of me, is that okay?
No,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, no. The next line item I was going to talk about was contractual, so it's just gonna be down about 5 from building repairs and maintenance. That is 101 42110 0303. The increase in contractual from last year is, last year was budgeted 10,000. This year we are budgeting 20,000. If you remember when we did the budget last year, we had made a substantial purchase. We upgraded our tasers. Our tasers that we had were end of life, out of service. If they needed, they were not able to be repaired or anything before. So we made an upgrade and purchased new tasers for the department. It's a 5-year contract, so basically we're paying for them over 5 years with full warranty. So if anything does happen to them, the new contract includes replacement parts, batteries, the cartridges, where the prior tasers we had did not include the price of cartridges, which is about $2,500 to $3,000 a year. When we entered into that agreement last year, we knew that we were going to have to increase our budget to cover for that. So our annual taser TAP plan costs about $15,000 a year. The other remaining money, $4,500 or so, is for contractual costs for our BCA network, CGIS and CGI network that we pay for through the state of Minnesota. 2 down from that is it's the dog pound expense is what we have it listed as. So again, it's 101 42110 0315. In prior years, we had budgeted approximately $10,000. In 2024 or 2023, you can see that it was $17,500 was our expense. Request is to increase that to $20,000. We're in contract negotiations with the Humane Society now to raise the monthly rent, which is $350 a month to $500 a month. That would be the only change to the contract going into 25. That will be starting for you before the end of the year. We've unofficially negotiated that with Humane Society. Jeff and I have also met with the Humane Society last Thursday, and at this point, they think they're funded through January. In February, they also have some other funding efforts, which they think they're hopefully can kind of keep going down, keep the doors open. But obviously with the contract that we signed with the Humane Society back in, I believe, 22, we went from $4 a day to $18 a day to the city cost, which has significantly increased our cost for the use of the pound.
Can I just double check, are we paying them monthly?
We do, so it's a $500 monthly fee, so that's what's being, I'm sorry, it's $350 currently.
Yeah, but I'm just wanting to make sure we're paying them monthly. I'm concerned with.
Yes, so honestly, our monthly fees are probably anywhere $1,000 to $2,000. So it's $500 that we pay for a monthly fee, which buys us basically 5 kennels of storage.
Sure.
And then we pay $18 per day per animal. So that's most of those fees, is the impound fees that we pay for, that we pay to the Humane Society. We also recover about, on the revenue section each year, we recover, you don't have to scroll it, I'll find it for you, I believe it's about $4,000 a year. And that revenue that we recover from that is, it's two-sided, it is, let me make sure.
Is that
I
special?
apologize, yeah, last year was about $2,000, it's been about that $3,000 to $4,000 mark. That is money recovered for costs of animals that have been impounded and also animal license would go in that section, so.
So Jeff, the year-to-date totals, is that, are we up to date through the end of August?
No, we are not.
So what month are we at?
I believe for expenses, we're running about March. The expenses are? Okay, thank you, Holly.
Yeah, the revenues are.
Revenues are through June, is that what you said? Thank you.
The expenses should be fairly close. Then I guess I was just, unless there's any other questions on any of those items, again, most of those are kind of preset and not many of them are changing at all. You know, some of them are liability insurance, workers' compensation, taxes on the building, et cetera, things like that. On the capital improvements, kind of get back where Chief was talking about.
Chief?
Yes.
I'd just like to add a comment, just again, as a reminder on the workers' compensation. The number that is entered there is likely to go down. Based on our experience profile, we'll get that roughly mid to late November from the League of Minnesota Cities. It depends on our past our 3 years rolling past history, and what kind of a modification factor we get. What is entered here is the manual premium, which is the straight premium. Previous years, we did have, last year we had a 28% discount off of the manual premium. But again, I wanted, worst case scenario, I wanted to put the worst case scenario number there, similar to the chief did with the wages, with the contributions, so that number has a high likelihood of dropping.
Thank you. On the capital improvements,
Can I, just before we jump down to that one, the National Night Out, we have like actuals for 22 and 23, but no budget for 24.
So National Night Out, what we did last year is we moved that to community outreach.
Okay,
Community outreach.
so that's where the 3,000 then
Yeah,
is?
correct. So in
Okay.
community outreach, that includes, night, Halloween party, safety town, and then any other miscellaneous outreach that we do throughout the year.
Okay, and so we went from 6,000 to like 2,500 to 3,000, does that seem accurate?
So, that's a little deceiving also, you're right, so in 2022 it was 6,000 and it went to 2,500 in 2023. So a lot of that went is when we received funds for Night to Unite, a lot of that was donation money, wasn't actual expenses back to the city. We've actually changed that now some. The community outreach is still at $3,000 and about half or more goes to Night to Unite. But any fundraising that we do for that now, we run through a police benefit association.
Okay,
So we have the 50C3 benefit for the tax benefit for the people who donate. And then also, just for accounting and finance, it keeps it a little.
okay, thank you.
So Darren, on, did you already discuss the police, the para police and fire?
Say that one more time, Blaine, I'm sorry.
The para police and fire, looks like our past, we've been around 250, 234, and this year, your proposed is 301.
I can speak to that, Chief. In the past, the numbers with the police and fire, that's a formulaic amount. And again, much of that has to do with the increase in wage. 17.5, chief, or 17.7% of the wage goes to para. But you'll also notice that the FICA contributions, the chief is the only member of the police department where Social Security is withheld because para takes the place for the other officers.
And also for salary, so I mean, you know, when the union is, you know, when they do settle a contract, obviously all of that will come down with salary, PRA, FICA, Medicare, et cetera. The other salaries, we do have 3 AFSCME employees in the police department. Their next year contract is already established, so we know what that raise would be. And then the janitor, Gabe, we pay 20% of his salary out of our budget also. So the AFSCME union, those are fixed assets, and we are not assets, sorry, increases that we know we're going to incur. And like Jeff said, when you raise the wages for the union, all of those come with it. But again, that will, once it's settled contract, those will definitely change.
So just going back to the buildings and structures, so your 22 was 40,000 and some change, and then the actual for 2023 was $122. That seems odd.
Building and structures,
0520,
yeah, 40,000 for 2022.
and then 23 is $122.
The only thing I can account for that, and you know, I could get a better answer for you, is most or all of those upgrades that we did to the police department garage were funded through ARPA.
Okay,
So I think they were coded to a different line item.
okay,
So although there was substantial upgrades, we didn't technically budget anything. Again, that line item is a capital improvement. I'll explain what I've increased this year. So 22, we obviously had budgeted a capital improvement of $40,000. In 23, we didn't budget a capital improvement expenditure. The improvements we did were funded through a different line item.
was that the same for 24 then? There's nothing for 24.
For 2024 currently, yeah, we have not budgeted any improvements for 2024 at the police department.
Okay.
Anything in that line item, correct? So we'll just, on that note, with capital improvements, that also starts on the building and structures, the same line item that Christy and I were just talking about. The request that I've put in this year, the 27,000 that you'll see on your worksheet, is to replace the back parking lot retaining wall. If any of you have been in the police department, our back parking lot is the retaining wall on the east side of that parking lot. It's original to the building. It's the same kind of bricks that many of our downtown buildings are, it's the smaller bricks with a stucco finish on it. The stucco finish is crumbling, the bricks are starting to erode and fall out. I mean, currently it's still structurally sound, but at the same time, it is falling apart, it's crumbling. At some point, when we did have it inspected this year and received a quote, it's going to be a safety concern at some point, it's still structurally holding, and that was the repair cost to have that repaired next year. The one just below that, again, this will be 101-42-110-0550 motor vehicles. The request for that this year was 65,000. To break that down, in the past, yes, Tim, we have budgeted 40,000 for a car. That number we have increased to 50,000. We haven't been able to purchase a car since 2022. We could buy cars for just about 40,000 on the nose. They're about 39,000. Those have since substantially increased. The last vehicle we paid for was about $48,000. They've significantly increased. However, it has been several years since we've been able to purchase a vehicle. So 50,000 would be a fair number for us to purchase a vehicle. And sometimes, you know, our preference is the Explorers, they call police utility, or the Explorers you see us drive. However, sometimes they can be difficult to order, obtain, get. So sometimes we have to supplement different vehicles, so that gives us a little bit of margin of error depending on the type of vehicle we need to purchase. The other 15,000 for that 65 is we haven't budgeted anything in the past for investigator squads or others. We have 3 other investigator squads that are driven every day. historically, as long as I can remember, part of the police department, we haven't budgeted any money for that. We currently have a real good fleet of investigator squads, however, we don't start looking down as a 5-year plan or something to replace those. Again, it's just a large ask when we get in front of council. So I have worked out a 5-year rotation plan at $15,000 a year to reserve money to buy cars down the road. That's a new request that hasn't, I believe it might have been introduced in last year's budget, but we did remove that for the sake of helping out the annual budget. But again, the request is back in this year. That's where the $65,000 difference is. Line item just below that, office equipment and furniture. They've put in a $5,000 request to purchase classroom chairs and break room chairs. I also had this in our budget last year, and again, I did remove it for sake of cutting the budget. The chairs in our classroom and our break room have been there as long as I've been there, which is now about 21 years. When we received them, they were a gift from the library. Although we appreciated the gift, they are well worn and most are broken. We have a classroom where we can host classroom trainings. We have a beautiful facility to utilize. We don't have chairs for people to sit down there. We have about 6 or 8 chairs anymore. So, we've priced those out using last year's number. $5,000 is a horribly expensive number for chairs, but that would buy us about 30 chairs, which again is probably the bare minimum numbers that we would need to host trainings at the police department. Most of the trainings at the BCA we come and host if we offer to do that, which allows us free tuition for our officers to attend. They need a minimum of 25 people to attend. So again, we're just at the point where we have nice tables, nice room, and no chairs to go around the tables. So that's that request. Again, that was taken out from last year's budget and added back in this year. And lastly, the other equipment, so again, that's 101-42-110-0580. It's a $35,000 request. $25,000 of that is to purchase safety and emergency equipment for the squad cars that we purchase. We've historically budgeted about that $20,000 mark for that, so that's typically an expense that we always keep in the capital improvements. So with the vehicle also comes the other equipment, the expenditure to purchase safety equipment. $25,000 is budgeted for outfit or upfit as they call it, the squad car, which would be, cages, lights, consoles, light bars, everything in between. And like everything, substantially increased. It's, I think over the last 3 years, it's been a 15 to 20% increase on equipment and install costs. And the other $10,000 of that $35,000 ask is our interview system, recording system at the police department. We have 2 interview rooms. One we use for children, victim witness interviews. The other one we use for a conference room and or interviewing suspects or anybody else related to cases. That system is past its life expectancy, needs to be replaced. And crazy enough, you wouldn't think it'd be that hard to go find a camera system to use for interview rooms. However, it's very specific where we need to turn it on and off. We need to have it where audio can be on or off. And most systems nowadays are either motion censored or they're always recording, etc. And there are systems out there, but very few of them. They're very expensive. This bid that we received is through the same company in which we have our body-worn cameras and our in-car cameras. And it would be a $10,000 annual recurring fee. Would be buying the system over the course of 5 years. And that would be a $10,000 expense for year 1. And again, that number, we could definitely look at trying to reduce that on some of the installs. We haven't negotiated an actual contract. We have received bids, but Deputy Nelson has done that for us. And he thinks, with going back to them and kind of negotiating some of the install costs and different things, we could likely reduce that. I don't know how much you think you could, maybe 25% or something like that. But again, for the preliminary budget, that's what we use for that number.
On the cameras, after those 5 years, do we own it or is it a lease and then we have to renegotiate a new agreement?
We would own it.
Chief, do we still sell forfeited vehicles?
We do, yep. So we used to have a substantial amount of forfeited vehicles that we would seized through DWI, either alcohol or drug-related DWIs. The state, within the last 2 years, has changed the forfeiture laws on that. So the number of vehicles that we forfeit have been reduced to under half. We used to sell upwards of 20 vehicles a year. Now we're probably selling 5 to 6. But we do have a reserve fund still available as a forfeited vehicle fund. It's called DWI penalty assessment fund that we have. We do have availability to spend. I believe there's about $73,000 in that fund. However, it is restricted by the state. It can only be used for DWI enforcement. So something with a nexus with DWI enforcement it could be used for.
Did we at one time use forfeited vehicles for our unmarked
Squad cars.
squad cars?
We've never used, well, yes, we have. Yeah, absolutely we have. We have received 2 of them over the years. Some we've used as undercover cars, not as like investigator cars. And yeah, we did receive a fairly new vehicle that was paid off several years ago that we used as an investigator car. And that's always an option. We're always looking for that. It's just unfortunate that's a very rare circumstance where you get a very new, nice car with not owed any money on it. Usually a forfeited vehicle that's worth $5,000 and they have $10,000 on it. It's typically how it works, which also reduces your ability to forfeit some vehicles.
So on the camera systems and technology like that, is there such a thing where you buy a service and it keeps you up to date on the new technology that comes out year after year, so we don't have to own it and then it becomes obsolete and then do the same thing again? Is there such a thing as?
That's kind of the point of the Axon system, is you enter in a 5-year agreement. Once you budget $10,000 or whatever that number is, it's just kind of recurring, and then after that 5-year is typically end of life, you just enter into a contract and you're already kind of used to it, so to say, and then you would get new equipment and the upgrades basically every 5 years. Similar to like our body worn cameras, our contract on that, we get new cameras.
So doing those types of systems, does that save you money as opposed to going out and buying new systems every?
Yeah, I mean, the current system we have is several years old. I think the initial cost on that one between the 2 camera systems was at 15,000 to 20,000 marks. I mean, this one is substantially more. However, like Nathan said, with these systems, you're basically, like Morgan had said, we would own it after 5 years if we elected not to renew the contract. However, the nice piece about that too is if there's any damage to equipment, any failure, or something goes down, it's 100% warranty. So they will just come in and replace that. And the other piece with it, kind of unique with interview recording systems, is the evidentiary value of that has to be specific. It can't be tied in with the other servers like we have camera systems in the city. It has to be a separate DVR or a recording system that only we have access at the police department. It's very unique. I mean, for the most part, you could go up to any local hardware store and buy a camera system and make it work at your house. But this is very unique to how it works as far as interviewing people, the ability to view the interview room, ability to talk to the people who are doing the interviews, and the data entry, or not necessarily data entry, but the evidentiary value of retaining that data, that is court worthy.
Okay.
This storage system does come with unlimited storage too. That's on their servers, so it doesn't require us to do any extra infrastructure to store all that data.
Darren,
Yes.
I noticed the other day that there was a new squad or a pickup or something that I noticed, which looks very sharp. So is that used as a patrol?
So yes, that one is gonna be used as a patrol. That vehicle is actually a 23 purchase. So like I mentioned earlier, we haven't bought a car, I haven't been able to get a squad car since 2021. We looked to start ordering cars in 2021. Ford opened, or I should say not Ford and Chevy. There's a very short window when they open the ability to order vehicles. We were notified of that date. We did go in and put our name on the list. All dealers came out and said they're only fulfilling the list that you're already on, they're not doing a new one. So that kind of kicked us into 22. 22, we were able to start getting ourselves on a list and ordering cars. However, now fast forward, that's a 23 vehicle. That would have pushed us to 23, sorry, 21 to 22 to 23. So at the time, we looked at everything. We tried to get Chevys, Dodges, That was about our human choice at the time, which there is a place for that vehicle in our fleet, and that would definitely be a primary use squad car. But yeah, that was the only option, and that's from last.
No, that winter's fine, no.
Yeah. No, and actually.
Used for
we're
something
excited
else,
about it.
for
It'll be
hauling
a nice
stuff, or-
use, and, you know, yeah, it'll definitely has its place in our fleet.
It looks good. Thank you.
Unless there's anything else, I'd be happy to discuss. I just really wanted to touch on kind of some of the increases. Most of the budget stays the same. Most of the increases are salaries and a few capital expenditures requests. Other than that, most of the other line items are very, very similar, if not the same from last year.
Thank you, Darren.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan.
Hey Jeff, can I just ask like what other departments we're going over this evening?
The last department we have is Parks and Rec.
Okay.
And Mayor and Council, I did make an attempt on this sheet to try to keep things on the same pages for this, but Parks and Rec budget is one of the more lengthy departments we have. That would be in your the heavier packet that was distributed. The heavier packet. It looks like this here. Here.
You don't have that on your spreadsheet?
It is on the spreadsheet as well, but I had a hard copy of it so that any notes could be taken.
I don't see a tab for Parks and Recs.
There is not a tab. It is under the budget to actual tab,
Okay.
under the 225 account number, that first column A. Just for general knowledge, the split, this year we are slightly time crunched budgetarily, so I did not feel it appropriate. However, in future budgets, I've spoken with Lance, with CLA and Holly. For some reason, at some point in the past, they put Parks and Rec outside of the general fund. They put it in Fund 225. It is, however, generally considered to be a general fund department. And Lance and Holly and I have discussed, and while we've not reached a decision, there is the possibility that we may be moving that to 101 fund in future years. But again, this year, we're very time crunched. The budget season would normally start at the end of May, and we began this budget season at the beginning of August. So that time limitation, there are a lot of things that would have been nice to have been able to accomplish, but we're not in a position to meet the state deadlines on the preliminary budget and do so. With the levy affiliated with the Parks Department, I did approximate the same split as previous years, which is roughly 50% of our levy does go to the Parks and Rec Department, And barring that, Jake is the most knowledgeable about the department, can answer the historic questions. I will chime in as necessary, Jake. But I think we'll probably be best to wait for.
Very much so. We wanna wait for.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, Jake, when council member returns, I do have a summary sheet that I can go over as we come through the sections for, the department, similar to the others. I did break down some of the prime drivers of increases and decreases. God, this lighting sucks.
The lighting,
The lighting,
serious.
it's terrible. Yes, next up, we have the Parks and Recreation Department. Some of the, just as we go through each section, I've got a sheet to assist Jake with moving forward. Our charges for services, we are down 11% budgeted in preparation against previous years, our previous year's budget. The primary driver of that is we reduced the campground revenue from 30,000 to 20,000 as a conservative estimate. I believe the campground was anticipated to be open earlier than it was, and we used the week-to-week, very small bit of data that we had to extrapolate the 20,000. And again, in course with our budgeting philosophy, we wanted to be conservative with our revenue estimates. So that is a 33% drop. It is a $10,000 drop in campground fees. Our hope is that we will exceed that amount. However,
There's no year-to-date numbers currently, or?
pardon?
I'm looking those up right now for you.
Our miscellaneous revenue, we did increase 9.9%. Jake's anticipating additional revenue from tournaments based on current year
So-
end trends.
Miscellaneous revenue?
Yes, sir, that is,
Thought you said that if you can
Name it.
budget it, you can name it.
I agree. I'm using the subtotal of the category that is in place.
Can you move it?
The components of this they are named. The total subcategory does not have a name. And that is just a carryover from what it is in the software. What this comes from is park shelters rent, donations and gifts, Kids First donations and tournament revenue. Those are the line items that compose this particular item.
Can I just ask for tabs? Are we still just under budget to actual, or is there actually a park and rec?
Your copy, ma'am, it's on budget to actual.
And where would that start at?
At 1473.
So did you find the current year-to-dates for the
For the
campground?
campground, yes, we're at $5,135.
So
July 26th,
when did the campground open?
July 26th, 2024.
And we got $5,000 from that time?
Correct. Plus, we have the company, the Expressway coming in, this month and next month. And we do charge them, but we charge them at the end of the year. So they send me a list of all the campers or all the people that are working during the harvest season. So, those numbers should increase, as we close out, as we close the campground.
So is that new business from last year? Is that similar to?
That's similar to previous years. Yep. Just if you look at 225, 30,000, 4405, the mowing and weed control, we do have a proposed budget for next year because Corky at the time this past winter asked the Park and Rec to take over the nuisance mowing. So we have done that this summer. So currently we are at a year-to-date budget of $2,115. And we will still have some more coming in throughout this fall. The grass is still growing, so.
Jake, who was doing it before you guys took it over?
Oh my gosh, it was a company we hired out. I don't remember what their names were, the company's name. I didn't have to deal with that, so.
And is that something that you guys feel is a doable thing?
We've had our ups and downs with it this summer. But yes, I think, after our first year doing it, I think we can still continue to do it. We also do nuisance plowing in the winter too as well, with certain sidewalks and things like that through town, so. I do feel we could keep it up.
So you kept up this summer?
Yeah, it was, yep, we did. But the amount of phone calls and the work that goes into it is a lot more than I anticipated.
Now, is that just that people are complaining that someone hasn't mowed their lawn and then you have to go in there and charge
Yes.
them to get their
So what
lawn mowed?
happens is we'll get a phone call, it's just a phone call basis, and we'll receive a phone call at a certain location. We'll go check it, we'll measure it. If it's within the ordinance, we don't do anything. If it's within the ordinance, we send out a letter, 7 days, we go back on the 8th day, and if it's not mowed, we mow it and then we build them.
So all
So
the
do you guys
hours,
think you, oh, sorry.
so all the hours we're putting in, are we recuperating, are we?
Yeah, we charge 150. We figured that would be, we did.
That's all included admin fees that we have to do,
Yeah.
send letters?
Yep, so we have it all broken down. I can actually look at the letter right now.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that we do have the bandwidth and that we are charging appropriately.
And are people paying?
Alright, that's,
Well, if they don't pay,
Goes on the taxes.
it goes on
Those
to
are the
taxes.
yeah.
I can attest to it, Jake, that, Jake and I have had several conversations with several people that we've had issues with that call home in my ward, so.
I just wanna make sure that like, we're actually recouping the cost if we decide to do this internally and not, outsource it. That it's actually, we're actually saving ourselves money or at least recouping the cost of what it's taking for us to do this. And if you guys truly have the bandwidth to be doing all this, cause it seems like there's a lot going on with the mowing in general for you guys.
We do have a lot that we do, so, but,
Yeah.
so we charge a cost of $80, an admission fee of $25, and a fuel cost of $20, for a total of $125 per hour, is what we charge.
Okay, and how long is it
Based-
taking?
Well, I can't give you a straight answer, some lawns could take maybe an hour. If we go on site, we're gonna charge an hour, whether it takes us 30 minutes or 45, that's just what we're gonna charge. But if it takes us 2, 3, we're charging $125 an hour. I mean,
Okay.
there's some lawns that I've seen that have grass this high and thistles this thick.
Sure,
So it's
And
quite
there's
a
times-
process.
There's times that he's had to send someone up there and it's so deep that they're mowing it 3 or 4 times too.
sure.
We go back, we go in and weed whip first and then we mow. I mean, it all depends where you're at.
And you're accounting for the time it's taking also for whoever it is to send out the letters and stuff too?
Yes, that would be the admin fee.
So is it cost prohibitive? I mean, are we getting a lot of repeat offenders or,
It's a lot of reasons, yes.
so should we increase the prices?
It is a lot of repeat offenders.
There's a lot of repeat offenders.
Obviously, it's,
Yeah.
they don't care about paying the first one, let's increase the prices.
So every time you send out, you just,
Is that something that has to be approved as a fee schedule?
I mean, at some point, it should be cost prohibitive if like, holy crap, I don't have to pay this again, I better keep my,
I see what you're saying.
My
Yeah.
question goes back to those people that are repeat offenders. Are they paying that? I know we're saying it goes on their taxes. Do they realize that goes onto their taxes? Or are they just like, keep coming and mowing my lawn, I'm never gonna pay you?
No, they have to, I mean.
It goes on their
It goes on
taxes.
their taxes.
No, I realize that it goes on their taxes. Do they realize it goes on their taxes?
Well, we send out a letter specifically stating everything that we do and what goes on. So whether they get that letter or not, I can't tell you. We go through the GIS program on Polk County and we find their parcel number and then we find out who owns that building or that house. And then that's where we send that letter to.
so then if, once it goes on the taxes, how do we recoup the cost back into our revenue?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't deal with that.
That would come as a separate line item from the county on the tax.
But not
when-
into
when we-
this,
On
not
twice a
into
year
this-
when we get our payments from the county.
But not into this line item under revenue?
Well, we can code it to that. But
Shouldn't it
when
be
we get,
coded to
when we
that?
get the payment from the county, it would be a separate line item on our tax levy. It's tax levy plus any other items that are there, similar to an assessment. It's broken out separately.
But shouldn't it be coded that?
Pardon?
Once we get it from the county, shouldn't it be coded under this?
Once we get it from the county, yes, that would just be a normal accounting function.
Okay.
So yeah, Jake, I think, I don't know, see what everybody else thinks here, but maybe we should look at increasing those fees. I mean, maybe there should be give me a worst case scenario of a lawn or a grass. How many times did you do it this summer? Just roughly. I mean, you don't have to give me exact. I mean, is there
Probably
3 times?
3, 4 times.
So could it be something like first time it's this, second time it's this, third time it's,
definitely look into that.
Well, I definitely think that could be a deterrent. I'm just wondering, do we have to have that as a,
We would need to have that in our fee schedule. However, later this budget season, we can address that. And just for the council's awareness, that is what Councilmember Delane has mentioned is normal practice in many cities.
Yeah.
The more violators, the higher the cost gets.
I think if your issues are mainly with repeat offenders, it would make common sense to do something about that, to try to deter them from to continuously using us as their lawn service.
And then some cases, you know, if they come in and the city comes in and mows it, sometimes it's cheaper to have the city mow it
Right,
than, well.
Yeah.
that's what we need to get away from. If
Somebody
it's cost of doing business, then might as well let the city do it. That's not a good policy to have,
Right.
you know?
I wanna make sure, are these repeat offenders, like, have we talked to them, do we know their stories? Is it an elderly person that just like can't get out there? I just wanna make sure that we're, either way, I realize that their yards need to be taken care of, but I just wanna know, like, is it just people that are just ignoring their yard? Or could they be having a legit reason why their lawn is not getting mowed?
So it's kind of a mix of all, you know, I know some people don't actually live in town, like we send letters to Colorado. So they're not gonna pay, they're gonna take it on their taxes, you know, or some are they just don't wanna mow their lawn. And I mean, some of the stuff that I've seen and that I know Scott, my employees have seen, has been garbage and chains and, I mean, you name it, they've probably seen it in the back of these yards. It's a mix of everything, and I can't give you a specific answer, but I know it's a mix of a lot.
There are also properties that are in the process of foreclosure.
Correct.
So those,
Point of order, members of the council, if we go down the rabbit hole this deep on all of the line items,
Yeah.
we'll still be here in November.
Yeah.
This.
And that's fair, but I just
Staff
wanna
can
make,
research this and come back to us.
I get it. The only thing I said is we need to look at increasing the prices, period.
Yeah, I think just when we go to fee schedule, let's have that conversation.
Okay, I have it in my notes, thank you.
and I'm fine with that, I just also want us to look at the demographics if this is happening, because I don't want us to be, if we are looking at this and this is a bunch of elderly people that are not able to mow their yards and we're now just raising these fees. Now, if that's not the case, that's not the case, but I just wanna make sure that we're not putting people in bad situations when they're already in a bad situation.
It should be a completely different conversation then, if that's the case.
Right, and I'm just saying, like, as we go into that, I just wanna make sure that that's not a common story that we're seeing. And that might not be something you're seeing at all.
Moving along here, do we wanna go line item to line item?
no,
I just wanna know where your big increases and decreases are.
Okay, so, I have a 8.57% decrease in recreation fees, moving along to, 2025. My answer to that is, our activities fluctuate with numbers every year. So what I did is I put 32,000 in, and I based my predictions on the actuals from 23 and 24. So that's a decrease,
Can I ask Jake, the next line with the adult rec fees?
yep.
The year-to-date is 1,300, so do we just have that many more things coming
So-
up between now and January?
I believe, the year-to-date things have not been posted into that.
Yeah.
So,
So a monthly revenues, those are things that are coming in, they're paying online. So then they're hitting the bank and they haven't been put into our accounting software basically.
Okay,
So we have the money, they're just not reflected.
and so when we say year-to-date on here, what are we thinking, like how far back are we thinking that we still haven't?
Well, through June is where they're at, but
Okay.
anything beyond June.
Okay,
So just a quick question, like, is it your intention, like, we'll have to be up to date,
Yes.
like, next year?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're working on it right now, even to get these revenues in.
Okay, I mean, not just revenues, but when we're looking at, you know, we should see previous months' actuals,
Right, yep.
okay?
Again, Club Kid, what we did this year is we offered our program, Monday through Thursday instead of Monday through Friday. We have everything Monday through Thursday except for that program. And, so we dropped $20 for each kid, but we offered it, we didn't put a cap on it, we just offered it Monday through Thursday for 4 days instead of 5. 4 hours a day, still the same times except we just don't offer it Fridays. So based off of previous years and then our net revenue, through our, net activity, the 15.5 is a reasonable number. I'm showing 15.9 on my net activities that I have in front of me for 2024. So, that could increase for sure next year. Like I said, we don't put a cap on how many kids, so.
What's the reason for not offering on Fridays?
It just got to be a lot for our staff. You know, and again, we only offer programs Monday through Thursday. That was the only program we offered on Friday. So, you can tell the kids in the program too, by Friday they're getting tired, and we just had a lot of mishaps and things like that with the kids, so.
What was the numbers for this year versus last year?
So last year we had we had 62. Excuse me, last year we had 68, this year we had 71.
Okay.
Okay. So if we go down to like the sponsor fees for hockey, so 4809, 4810, 4811, we're gonna move those into adult. So like the sponsor fees, that's like our, like we get 4 teams a year to play adult hockey, and we charge them like we charge adult programs, $750. We're gonna move that into an adult recreation, and just get rid of that line item. Same thing with softball player fees. That's your softball fees for adult softball. That's gonna get moved into adult recreation. And then our Babe Ruth program, that's a youth activity, so we're gonna move that into our youth rec, and not have a separate line item for them.
Can I ask on that? If we're gonna reevaluate having a particular park and rec program at some point, doesn't it seem that it would make sense to have those line items so you could see like year over year how many people are in those programs or doing the sponsorship or what have you?
Well, I still have the numbers because I have the active net, so I still sign up for Babe Ruth baseball. It just goes into the recreation fee fund instead of its own Babe Ruth baseball fund.
Okay.
So the other question I have is, all the fees that we charge for these different activities, are they covered in our expenses?
Yeah, for the most part, I believe they are. You know, we're pretty lucky with a lot of our baseball program because the donations that we get from the Baseball Association help out a lot. You know, like in the skating fees for figure skating and hockey. Last year, my net revenue shows, you know, 41,000, and I'm not sure exactly what our expense was for just that specific program, but you know, we are pretty low though. Delaying in our, you know, we did a study in our Minnesota, in our District 16, you know, and we're about, I think we're about 3rd or 4th with all the teams as far as how much we charge for hockey. We're pretty low. Even in our park and rec or baseball and things like that, we're still pretty low for our region.
Again, that's something I think we'd like to look at that during the fee schedule time.
And we did up it in 2022. And what we did is we did up them in 2022, and then we upped them, so like right now, when someone signs up for an activity, the transaction fee, you know, we're eating that. So my thought process starting January 1st would be to, you know, stay at the fee schedule that we're on, but if it's 3.5% or 4.5 or whatever, on the top of my head, charge that. So that's a personal transaction.
We need to,
So I raised the prices, and this was brought up when we did this
Yeah,
in 22, so that I was told back then to raise our prices so we cover that. But now I think we need to charge that.
so do we know what we're paying in transactions fees just totally?
Yeah, well, I don't have it on this report, so I do not have an answer for you, but I'll put a note in.
Yeah, it would be nice to know that, especially if we're gonna start talking about that for fee schedule
Yeah,
too.
I will put a note right now and I'll find that.
It's not this credit card processing.
It's a credit card, well,
The ActiveNet also has a fee, I believe, is that correct, Jake?
that's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
it's the transaction fee.
Yeah, they had,
that
For
we're
utilizing ActiveNet,
We are utilizing ActiveNet.
I know that, so the transaction fee is for us utilizing ActiveNet, or is it for the credit card?
It's for the transaction, when I put in my credit card, that's.
So it's a
the
credit card
process.
transaction. Okay, so that would mean that approximately we've been paying $3,200 every year
Approximately. For what, line item?
for the credit card processing.
0315.
Right, and I don't know if that's up to date or not, but yes.
Well, I was just looking at the actuals for 22 and 23, so those should be up to date,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Would we like to get to the pool? Okay. So,
Jake,
yeah,
if I can just provide some background.
Yeah.
I believe Keenan has a 3-slide PowerPoint
oh,
that we can, Keenan, do you have that ready to go up? Yes. Just so that the council and the audience is aware, knowing that I want to be data-driven. I want to provide the council with information so that they can make intelligent decisions. I did have a company, they're an AI company that uses data mining, cell phone data, among others, to identify traffic. And as a teaser, they offered me a location of my choosing to demonstrate their capabilities. So I asked them to utilize the pool building.
And can I ask for how long, what like the time period was?
They have history going back several years. Predominantly, the information that we used during this presentation was the past year.
Okay,
But they also have some year over year. This is an overview of what we have. On the screen is let me pull up my copy of it so that I can read properly. On the screen,
no, I'm good, no.
do we get a copy of this so we can see it?
actually, let me send an email real quick. And And Keenan, I apologize, I thought I had it in the right order and things, but in putting this together. Yeah, one moment, let me get to my email so that I can send the council. I'll send it quickly without a, members of council, you will be getting it without, without a subject line. I'm just sending it real quick. These numbers, like I said, these. The first slide there that we see, I'll give a moment to catch up, but I'll give a little background. This is weekly visits. The visits average between and the data that, this is, I don't have the comma delineated file behind me. Behind this, I had to screenshot as the presentation was moving forward. But we average between 200 and 240 visits a week. Those are not necessarily unique visits, they're just the number of pings that come through, and if you use the number 225 divided by 6 days open, that's 37, roughly 37 visits a day. Now, that does also count staff, Scott, and, you know, so, and Gabe when he goes to clean the facility. So that's our weekly visit chart, and you'll notice in August when Ox Cart Days is occurring, on the far right-hand side, that we've got that big peak, and we also had a very large peak the first week of June.
Hey,
I
Jeff,
can't
can
see.
you give us access to this on SharePoint? It's saying that we have to request access from you.
Just sent a copy, I don't know why it would say that.
It
It's
says
from
we
your
need
OneDrive.
access.
Through SharePoint.
Let's see. Hopefully this will fix that. Okay, I just sent it from another location, you should have access.
Jeff, I have two questions on this. Does this count if people had their location turned off on their phone?
Yes and no. There's a lot of AI statistical analysis that goes into this because they identify that not everyone has a phone, not everyone, so it is aggregated data.
Okay. And then June, is that when that fundraiser happened? Does
Pardon?
anyone remember? Was June when they did that fundraiser event?
Someone in the crowd said that was April.
Okay.
They keep track, don't they, when you come in? So there
Yeah,
should,
everyone signs in.
what do they do with that paper at the end of the day? They just throw it away? Or is it,
We have copies.
Well, the information that really is, that I would like to get to, this is it's generic information. It is not meant to be an absolute precise head count, because that would be very difficult to obtain, but it is a statistically valid estimate of the numbers. Yeah, Keenan, if you could go to the next slide. What we have here is a slide, it shows the map. And Keenan, can you just say play slideshow so that way it full screen so that it's larger?
I was trying to earlier, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Zoom in as much as I can.
And I'll go up so that I can point out what we have, what this is showing. The city of Crookston is this area between my fingers. The Crookston zip code, Fisher zip code, and Red Lake Falls zip code is where primarily most people come from. And the lighter the green or greenish yellow, the fewer people are coming from those regions. So most of our people are coming from these 3 zip codes around, but we do have some from South Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, Mentor, Maple Park. So we do have people from other areas coming in. I need to slide 2 of them. All right, one more time. You're gonna need to slide 2 of them, I believe, to get to the next. What this shows us is where people are coming from and where people are going, according to their location data. Out of the people that arrive, and this is over the course of a year, 75.9% came from their home and went to the pool. From the pool, 63.6% went back home, or went home after the pool, not necessarily back home. These are in decreasing order of percentages. The next most common place that people came from was work. 5.5% of people came from work. The next was Wildwood Park, 1.9%. 0.7% came from the Holiday Station, the gas station, and 0.5 came from Walmart, 0.5%. After they left the pool, again, 63.6% of people went home, 8.9% went to Walmart, 4.8% went to work, and 2.3% went to McDonald's, and 2% went to Hugo's. Those are the top 5 in each category. So that gives us an idea of whether or not people are spending money in town when they come to the pool.
There's several of us that don't ever bring our phone to the pool.
That's why the statistic analysis comes into play, ma'am. It is an art, it is a science, it's not a science, but the numbers are statistically valid in that they track people nationwide in every zip code in the country. So they're tied in with various other AI companies to identify.
And how would you track the children that are coming and going?
Again, ma'am, it's a statistical analysis. It's not, it is significant, statistically significant. It is not an exact count.
So Jake, you said that you have those counts, correct?
We do, we have copies.
What the more important portion of this is not necessarily exactly how many. The more important piece of this data is 1, where are people coming from? And 2, where are they going? So that we know where our consumers are coming from and going to. That way we can identify the users of our service. So that's just some basic background information. I apologize for the framing of it. This was put together today based on information once we realized that we would have questions on this subject moving forward.
So Jake, you would have, documentation that shows what the deal.
Every morning or in an afternoon, we have a front desk staff, so the ladies come in, or kids or whoever, and they write their names down, they check in.
Is there a way we could get it, like, the last 2 months or?
Yep, I'll talk to Amanda, she's our supervisor. And
Jake, do we also track where they live?
What?
Do we track where they live?
Tracks by zip code, not any specific locations.
Jake, and I know that for a while, like this data wasn't even being documented. So how much data do we actually have on the attendance to polls? It was like 2 years now?
Yeah, 2 years, going on 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we started really hitting hard once, roughly 2 years, I would say.
We're hearing what you're saying, Jeff, but I think
Yeah.
the council, for the council, it's
and what I
important to
want-
know how many people are
Yeah,
voting.
and another idea that comes through, another item, and I didn't have this screen up. Year over 3 years ago, we're down 17.1% visits. Year over 2 years ago, we're down 5%. Year over year, this year, we are currently up 19%. We average roughly 2.1 thousand visitors a week.
What?
What?
I'm sorry, I apologize. 2.1 thousand visitors a year.
1,000?
Let's see, visits are 12.4 thousand. Visitors, 2.1. The visit frequency is 5.9 days out of a week. So we have, the users who use the pool use it heavily. That's what that data tells us.
But it's also gotta be based on the fact of how many times that pool's been shut down.
Yeah, there was
Yeah, we-
several months last year,
We
right?
had a couple of years where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, with some issues.
Jake, could
Now.
you do?
This is just some background information so that we, as we continue our discussion.
Morgan wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, I'm very in tune with what these types of presentations are. I get these myself multiple times. What I'm asking is, Jake, looking at real data, are you able to provide month by month this year? I mean, I'd love week by week, but that's insane to ask that right now. Could we get a month by month of how many users have come each month? And then based on those zip codes, because I would be interested to see how many of them are people that live in Crookston as we're looking at what we're gonna do with this.
Right.
And what people are using this outside of Crookston. And then what is the pay fee structure for people that live in Crookston versus those that don't? Is it the same?
We don't charge anything different than if they live in town or not live in town.
Right.
We have a fee
Standard
structure that we
fee.
just follow.
And it's just your name when you sign in, it's not
Just
your.
your name.
So there's no zip code associated?
Okay, so the zip code that was talking about this presentation.
I'm sorry, what? I cannot hear you.
Chip going.
When Jeff said something about zip codes, that was for this presentation, not the actual data that we carry.
That's right.
Morgan, can you say that one more time?
So Jeff said something about zip codes. That was the presentation that he was giving, not the actual real data that we are collecting.
The data from the pinged cell phones is what that was.
That was a presentation, yeah.
Okay.
So, going back to the pool now, if you go look at the 4731 and the 4732, those are down because a lot of the users buy monthly memberships. So their $36 a month goes into the membership fees. Currently, I just kind of, the numbers I put in are more of a average, I thought, so. I think they could go up, but that's it. Like I said, a lot of our users, are membership, they pay monthly, $36 a month. I don't pay $5 a time.
So, Jake, if I can, and I wanna just, I am not emotionally invested in any decision on the pool. I had a pool in my previous home. I enjoy swimming. Whether the council chooses to move forward with keeping the pool open or whether they choose to make a change is a council decision. However, for budgeting purposes, what the short answer is, our pool is 50 years old. We have as the council is aware, we have a facility study from 2022 that says that it needs $1.2 million in repairs, which is estimated to be 1.5 currently based on inflation. We have lost $30,000 a year in revenue from the schools. I spoke with the superintendent last week, and the school board is not budgeting their $30,000 payment. They've discontinued their swim team. As a result, the revenues that we have from the pool are approximately $27,000 a year. The expenses for the pool are roughly $329,000 a year. That leaves $300,000 roughly on the hook for the taxpayers to support this facility.
So that's roughly 6% levy.
1% of our levy is roughly $50,000.
So 6%.
8% roughly of our total tax levy on this preliminary budget, our last year, let me go back to last year. Our last year's tax levy was $3.5 million. Roughly 8.8% of our total tax levy is supporting this pool. Again, I am not emotionally invested. I do not have a dog in the fight other than council direction on what to move forward with on the facility. I can budget the funds. The budget currently as written includes operating funds on the pool. If the council chooses to close the pool, we've reached out to the League of Minnesota Cities. We would have a $10,000 a year liability cost for the vacant building. Their recommendation would be to demolish it upon closing to reduce that cost. I would anticipate that cost would likely be close to or more than the cost of operating. It is 50 years old.
I understand.
The customer side of the pool is in very good shape. I've visited the pool on several occasions. The simple thing is, the council has previously directed that no extraordinary funds are to be expended in maintaining this facility. Last week, we had a fire at a water heater. That will be covered by insurance. It'll be $1,000 deductible. What we thought was a bad pull station for the fire department, for the fire alarm system. Once the contractor came out to investigate it, it was identified that that was not just a bad pull station, but it was actually a bad motherboard. We are still awaiting the quote to find out the cost to repair or replace. And the reason I say repair or replace, the fire station is over 20 years old. The motherboards may or may not be available. If they are available, it's an analog system. It's a fail unsafe system. We could be in the same circumstance that we are now, where if the motherboard dies, we won't know until we don't know.
Does that not trigger something? Like, I mean,
So
we have buildings that I know if something's not working, whatever, it triggers whatever it is and then sent to a company.
those are digital systems. Those are what are known as fail safe. They constantly ping, and when they stop pinging, the central location knows that they're no longer working. This analog system works in reverse. When it has an event is when it pings.
So the one, I mean, I know
So
it's,
I'm sorry.
I know you said 1.6 million. or 1.5 with the inflation to,
That's a rough estimate.
right?
yes.
What does the pool look like then? Is it, it's still an old building?
The building itself is old.
By putting in, what I'm trying to ask is by putting in, say we found a way to get 1.5 million or whatever it is, I mean, are we sticking that kind of amount of money into a building that's, I mean,
I can't speak to how long it would last. I can't speak to the equipment.
What is the
I'd
assessment
like to
say?
see the fact that we have a pool. And
That how
as a
long?
former contractor in construction, it would be better to just take it down and look at bonding or something to bring another pool.
that's,
To put that 1.5 million into that building, it'd be a waste of money.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think the other part though that we need to address in the meantime is like the people who are utilizing that space right now, like what are the other options or opportunities that we have for them in the meantime, before we decide to either build something new, go through bonding to make sure that the citizens of Crookston want that. But I think the other part is not leaving, our residents high and dry one way or another. And I don't know if that necessarily means keeping the pool open. I wonder if there's other opportunities for us. We have 3 pools in 3 different hotels in this town. I just wonder if there's other options there.
Or you could contract with your contractor.
That's what I'm saying, contracting with one of the hotels where we pay maybe a nominal fee or something to allow that.
I did reach out to the county. The county is not interested in taking over the facility. From what I did not hear that directly from the county administrator. However, I've heard that from several sources who have spoken previously.
Only the city will do stuff like that.
Without even looking at the building?
I did reach out to the American. They do have an indoor pool. They seemed very receptive to the idea of allowing usage of their pool, particularly during the daytime hours when it was not being used. Their facility was not being did not have high usage. There are options out there. Again, I am simply asking for direction for budgetary.
If we did that, let's just say as a good faith, what if the city paid for the fees to go to the other place, just for the people that, I don't know, just trying to find an easy way for the transition to.
You show your ID or something, that you're a resident of Crookston.
Yeah,
And maybe if it's not,
The
then
o-
there's a minor fee.
The owner of the facility, the owner of the hotel is not in town. I spoke to the manager. They were very receptive. However, that is the extent of the discussions at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
However, it is a much smaller facility. We have an Olympic-sized pool, so it is. Like I said, I didn't wanna get too deep into the details of, we can make the budget work either way. Staff is not emotionally invested in the decision one way or the other, but in presenting information to the council, knowing the facilities report that is there and the condition of the structure and the infrastructure within the building. Again, the customer-facing side is in excellent condition. It's the other side, and so that's the direction that we wish to continue the operation while we determine?
So what's the process to bond for a pool, and how long is that gonna take to?
I can bond money in 3 to 6 months. But it would be a general obligation bond.
So do we have to have, before we do that, do we have to bring it to like a vote in like an election to see if the city in general wants to do this?
The council can put that out to her as a referendum. It's not I don't believe it's necessarily required. I would definitely want to check with Tanner on that. I can email
think
him
we should.
very quickly.
yeah.
I mean, I think we
What the
should.
cost for a pool would be. We don't maybe have to go extravagant, but as I said, I think the pool is needed in the community. That's I'm not speaking.
And I think so too, but
On the council.
I think if we're spending that type of taxpayer dollars, I think we should, much like the school did for the football field, bring it to a vote to the city and see what kind of response it gets.
Yeah, I think the other thing to just consider, 8% of our tax levy, is that even if we do, if we're able to make an agreement with some type of hotel or something, it's not gonna be $300,000. Which is the basic operating cost, not to be included with all the rest of the stuff that's going on. It is not ideal, but I also don't think that not doing anything and then closing it down is the right decision either.
Christy, I would agree with you there. But to a point of, as somebody that loves swimming, who used to swim competitively back in the day myself, like I understand that passion, but it's a very small percentage of our current population that is using that pool. And it is very hard for us to look and do an 8% levy for other people to be paying for it that aren't using it. And then us, to your point, I feel like we need to look at bonding or a different situation, but that needs to come to a vote because I understand the people that use it and they're very passionate and I support that, but it is still also a very extremely small percentage of our population using it.
Morgan, I agree with you, and I'm also gonna say that they probably could make the same argument for the CSC.
But the CSC holds
And the football
tournaments and
field.
drives.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, if we're really talking about
Arguments.
I
a
get it.
small percentage of our population are using
But
it.
what revenue are they bringing in versus we're spending,
Yeah,
right? Like, are we losing money in all the rest of those
yeah,
to the same percentage?
yeah.
There was some kind of talk about Riverview going in with this because they're finding a lot of people hips and knees and old. You're gonna all get there if you're not there already. And it's a lot easier to do therapy in a pool than to do
Well-
it laying on the bed.
And also, if Riverview wants to buy the pool, I think we're open to consideration as well.
I only heard that there was talk
Yeah.
with Riverview, so there's something else. They're sending their people, we have people that come now
Uh-huh.
that have hips and knees and whatever, and they say how much easier you can bend your knee in the water than land on a hard board like that, and the therapist is bending it for you.
Sure. So Jeff, has that been a part of our conversations yet? Has Riverview approached us?
Riverview has not approached us, however, I can approach them.
Sure.
Yep. do
Let's,
that.
I think, honestly, I would like to exhaust our avenues before.
There's a rumor out there.
I think at the end of the day, like, we could consider just having this sit in the budget, because right now, all we have to do is the prelim to make sure that we have our
can take it
highest,
out.
and then we can talk about.
Is it feasible to get something in this year? I mean, I know we're in September already, but something just on the ballot of
Too late.
It's too late to get anything on ballot.
Too late.
not
It's too
a
late.
number, but just say interest. Is there any interest?
I don't think it could be like the election ballot. I mean, I think we could do our own like impromptu type thing that we've done with like garbage. But I think at the end of the day, I would feel most comfortable if we're gonna put like some significant money into building out a facility, that it's something that is like a referendum similar to what the school did, to really make sure that this is what the citizens want. And I don't say that if like it's voted down, then that's the end all for everything. I mean, I still think that we should be considering.
I think we need to do two things here. I think we need to, maybe try to keep this facility open right now as long as we can. But in the meantime, we need to find out what the city of Crookston thinks about investing into a new one. And then after we find that out, let's just say we get an overwhelming response to not, and we just decide, well, the majority of Crookston has spoken and nobody's interested, 80% of whatever's not interested in paying for a pool within the city, and then we just go with the option of demoing it and
There's a different thing too that people are talking on the internet about getting rid of this pool and building an outdoor pool.
Well, I think that needs to be a whole different conversation.
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I think that's a whole different conversation.
This is a year-round thing that
Yeah.
people can use all year.
Right, and I think with that, yeah, again, I think that's something we have to consider. The other part that we have to talk about though for this city is that we, as a council, have said that we're not putting any more significant monies into this pool. So I think this is probably gonna come back to us having to find out what the estimates are for this fire panel before really making that decision, because at this point.
Tomorrow, at 9 o'clock, I'm meeting Matt from Watchman Player Systems, and he's gonna go through, and I should hopefully get a quote by, hopefully this week.
So Jake, on that note, I know it was also asked if we were getting more than one quote, or was this particular thing so niche that like there's
This was
only?
just what, the number that I saw on the fire panel is what I called, and we have, I don't know if it's a contract or not, this is what I called.
Okay.
Cause that's who was on the panel.
Maybe we should also see if there's other quotes just to see what's out there.
So I guess Councilmember Jurdy, to follow the train that you were going, in the opinion of this body, what is an extraordinary amount?
I think we wait and see what numbers come in for that motherboard and make a decision then.
Yeah.
We do
We're
meet,
still looking at over 300,000 on top of that a year, you know, but it sure would be nice, I mean, I know the revenue that we're currently getting, even if it's open all the time, is still not gonna come close to,
What it costs to run it.
right?
Do you have a revenue number from the beginning of the year till up to date now?
Yeah,
Do you have that?
yeah, it was in that packet, right?
Yeah, that's right.
the estimated annual revenue for 2025 is $27,000.
27,000, yeah.
But the operating cost was like 330, I think it was, right?
And the operating costs are
So,
330.
Could you break that, I mean, is it possible to break that down per day and take that times 3, however many days we'd probably be open and get a fair number of what it could be?
So I think, to give voice to the constituents that have contacted me, there is a consensus of opinion about willingness to pay taxes toward a pool. But I think the larger question is, do we put that energy into this existing problem, or do we focus those energies and those taxes on a solution that is more promising, that has a longer life and could perhaps be something that is not just a pool, but a community center, a place for community to gather for meetings. We could think outside the box here. It doesn't just have to be a hole in the ground that we pour water into. So I think that as we're discussing this and as our community is so passionate about this, bring your creative ideas to us, because this is going to entail an investment, and it's going to be something that we're going to be paying for over the next 20 years. So let's make a wise investment and really do some homework. I know that my colleague Christy Jurdy said that she looked into, when she was at the League of Minnesota Cities this past summer, a community built a brand new pool. Wasn't an Olympic-sized pool, but it was adequate, and the cost was about $6 million. So we're not looking at something that is a $20 million expense, but we are looking at a significant expense.
Yeah, I think, without recreating the wheel, and I think that we should consider this is, the one thing that I've seen, I was just recently in St. John's, and I was in Rochester, at their community center / pools and stuff, and there was a lot of volunteer efforts that went into actually making these things happen. And so I think we need to look at those models as we go forward, because I think that is also what made those things happen. And it wasn't just a city-led effort. And having said that, I think that with Riverview, I think that's another opportunity for us to be working with other entities to try to make this happen. I think at the end of the day, any and all the things that we have as amenities aren't necessarily always going to be huge revenue generators, but they're also attractors for people who are considering living here. And so I think that needs to be considered as well as we go forward.
And I think too, we have to be realistic. We also need childcare. And, you know, what are priorities going to be, you know, for, you know, building our future?
That's another issue.
Yeah, I believe I have the consensus that I was asking. Currently, we will leave the budget as is pending further information. We do, this is a preliminary. We still have 3 months to make determinations.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we should take some real time and really exhaust our options before making a
We have
decision.
someone that has a question from the audience.
More of a statement. I actually have an emotional attachment. I grew up as a swimmer there for the high school. But even with that attachment, if you were to take that 300, if you'd be left with 3 after the 27 that you're making revenue, and you put that towards something else. I mean, that had a pool in it, like you're saying, a community center. I hate to see the pool go too, but it is old. And, you know, if we have to keep putting the money into it over and over and over, a new facility that had other amenities, who knows? I mean, maybe a daycare is part of this center. I don't know, but it's just, that 300,000 could go towards a new pool instead.
So can you repeat what you had said earlier about maintaining what we have until we have a more permanent plan in place and putting
Yeah, I mean,
money towards that?
an option would be is continue doing what we're doing. We're losing money, we're bleeding money on it, but I'd like to have a path based on some consensus from the residents of Crookston that says, yes, we want to move forward, or no, we don't want to move forward with the pool. If the community says, no, we don't have the appetite for having our tax dollars go to a pool, then it is what it is. And we just, at that time, maybe stop putting money in the pool and close it down.
Survey.
That was my question.
Well, that's what I think we were thinking, something similar to the trash survey.
Yeah.
Something, I mean, yeah, I mean,
But you can't just hit them with it because they have to kind of get, you know, that's like when the school tries to get things, oh my God, my taxes are gonna go up $12.
oh, that's the thing, I mean.
It can't be, it's gotta take a time for that thing.
Well, I think similarly to what the school did is there was a lot of focus groups and listening sessions and explanation sessions and a lot of information that went out in publications as to what that actually would be. And I think that would be part of that process.
And like you said, it'd be
Members of the
nice to
council,
have-
if I may make a point of order. These are very valid conversations. However, our
But
goal is to.
this is a huge topic for this city, so I'm gonna take the amount of time I need to take to discuss this issue.
Well, I mean, this is like a budgetary thing here. We're gonna leave it in. We can focus on this at another time.
Right.
We can focus on this at a different,
I
we
get
don't
it.
have to go through it
So I get it, but what we
every
do, if we do a
detail.
survey like we're doing, we have to put in the amount of dollars that it would increase, so it's not just all my taxes are gonna go up.
That's all,
$500 a year.
that also has to be discussed in the future.
I mean, is there any other direction that we need to give them? Because I think that's really at the end of the day what we're looking for,
I
right?
think we need to see what
Direction, and then we'll go forward.
Yep.
Okay.
Numbers as to what it's gonna cost to take that down, as people of this city, we need to have numbers as to actual demolition cost, operation cost, and timeline, and the future plan of replacement.
Yes.
That's what we're gonna be doing.
Yeah, I think we're just trying to first do this part of it. I know, but this is gonna be first steps and then we'll go there. Yeah.
Somebody in the back?
Mike,
I'm the chair of the park board, and I would encourage the council to utilize the park board as a vehicle. Get some of this out here.
In what way, Mike?
Well,
Come up to the
public
mic.
comment at council meetings, you got 15 minutes. Look at it tonight.
So are you suggesting that these individuals who are interested to come to you guys first? Is that what you're asking?
They come.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
You know,
I'm just trying to like clarify the direction you're going with that.
we're here.
Okay.
I'm sure
Thank
they'll
you.
come the end of the year, but I would participate in this. For those of you who don't know, I'm a structural engineer. I was not involved in the original building of the pool. That was before I moved to Crookston. But I have been involved over the years in diagnosing. Trying to come up with something repairs. So that's really my area of expertise.
Jake, you have anything you want?
Wonderful, thank you.
So, guys, if you want, we can table the rest of the discussion on the Parks and Recs till the next meeting. I mean, nothing saying we can't do that.
I mean, at this point, we're not approving anything, we're just
Right.
listening to it and we're just trying to get some direction based on what the directives we were given. So I think we can still have this conversation once we're given the information we requested, right?
This is only so, the purpose of the direction was only so that I know which direction to move, because a demolition is likely to cost more than the budget has for operating expenses, and if that was the direction the council was inclined to move in, because this is a preliminary budget and we cannot exceed once we set that, I wanted to know which way the council was leaning so that I could budget appropriately for our preliminary levy.
Well, I guess the question is knowing what the demolition cost is gonna be in order to make that decision.
You have an idea of that, Jeff, or you don't?
I would expect it to be north of 300, probably in the 400 to 500 range.
So then the idea is put that number higher, right? That way you're not having to.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense, right? Similarly to what you did with some of the other budgets, you made them higher than they actually would be.
I can, but in order to balance that budget, the council would be sending a preliminary levy to the residents that would exceed what they received last year.
And let's just find out what it is, and then the other part is, I know we had mentioned too, that if we just kept it warm to the basic amount, it'd be 10,000 for the liability, and then how much was it gonna be just to keep it on the minimum amount? Did you say like 30 or
40 to 50,000.
Okay,
130,000.
so something to consider as well as an option B if we need to like push that down a year or something.
Well, let's do it then, let's discuss it.
Okay.
The next item that we have, Jake, I believe we have Highland.
I just wanted to mention, I just was texting somebody that I know at Riverview that runs their therapy there. They do not use the pool or recommend it based off of insurances anymore, and they used to have a contract with American, and they don't use that anymore either. So I don't know that that will be an option for Riverview.
So they have a contract with American Inn, is that correct?
No, they don't, because of insurances don't really pay for it anymore. It's
Okay.
only a couple sessions here and there. Not saying that people aren't going there on their own individually, but it is not something that their therapy is pushing.
Ah, okay.
It's kind of interesting, insurance companies pay through Medicare, Silver Sneakers, Blue Cross, Humana, all of them. That goes to SNAP Fitness. And SNAP is hooked up to American. I like him, I use it a lot. But I prefer you Monday through Thursday. Just saying.
Yeah.
For informational purposes. Going along? Okay. Go down to just a couple items here in 45127, 0102, you'll see that I bumped up our proposed budget to a 2,700 for overtime. Simply because, last year, we've held some tournaments, last couple of years with Legion tournament, we had a sub-state. Last year, we had the great opportunity to host a Section 8A high school baseball tournament in our community. That's a 3-day event, and so full-time staff work it, so it's overtime. And then, sounds like moving forward, we're gonna look into, like, next year, hosting the subsections for 8A, and then they wanna come back in 2026 to host the actual sections for 8A baseball. So every other year, we're gonna get something. It's not set in stone. This is what I was told by the Section 8 guy that goes up the field. But they like Carton Field. It's more of a central location too for teams in that section. So that's why that number's up a little bit. You go down to other improvements, that'd be a CIP. We're looking at, if we're gonna be hosting these tournaments in these, sections like I was talking about, we'd like to look at getting a new backstop pad, and then tarps, for like our fence lines and things like that. So $10,000 improvement for a new backstop pad at Carton Field, and some new tarps for our, baseball diamonds. Just to verify or correct here, 351864789 is a skate sharpening at the arena. It's down 50% because that got misplaced, that got sent into a skating fee account. So, I know it's more than $82, so. And we charge $5, so I don't even know how you get 82, increments of 5, but. So just to verify and let you guys know about that. Kind of the interdepartmental revenue, looking at, we talked with Jeff, we're looking at moving that, some of these accounts, like the 7020, the 7170, 7180, like the moving them into like the rent arena. So we have that fund up top. That fund is anytime anyone rents the rink, especially like UMC, and the school, that's why that's 170,000, is because that's where it goes. But just a topic, just a discussion that Jeff and I had. We'll talk more about it, but that's why you see kind of less money in revenue there, because we want to move it to just the rent arena.
Can I go up a bullet here with the golf simulator concerts? Concessions, I know is a blue line thing, but I know we kept talking about it being, the CSC being utilized for other things outside of hockey. Is there conversations about trying to promote that a little bit more?
Concerts?
And the golf simulator?
We don't have a golf simulator.
What happened to it?
It's broke, it's obsolete, it got taken down.
Okay.
And the golf course has a brand new one too now. so.
I know like the conversation had been us utilizing the CSC for a long time for other things like concerts or craft fairs or things like that. And I know like a couple of years ago that happened. I'm just curious if we're still trying to pursue that and find other revenue sources.
The craft fair, you know, I've been on the phone with those ladies the last couple of years and they don't come here ever since, I don't know if they used to have one before I started my position.
There was a
Was it
craft
big
fair
one,
several
wasn't it?
times.
There's a
Yeah,
craft.
Big
Huge
one.
one.
So, and concerts, like I know that we've done Hairball in there before. I'm just like
So
wondering
with
what other.
concerts, was that Pitt that did that or was that Stassen? Because I don't
Well,
know, how do you pay for the band?
With Hairball, when he was here, that was Shannon, and he did 90% of them. I mean, park staff helped out tremendously building the stage, but as far as promoting it, it was all Shannon, there was nobody else.
Well, that's kind of why we got the marketing person.
Right.
For stuff like that, so.
It's supposed to be part of the consideration.
So then.
Marketing events, getting events to fill the
Pursuing.
community build,
Yeah.
the community center during the summer off months to try to have more events in there.
Then with the big one that was here, I think it had to do with getting the, you know, the grant money through like a CVB. And there was an issue there a few years ago. So they kind of, I don't know, pulled up stakes. I don't know if they'd be come back again or not, but it's worth looking into.
Well, I know that there's also companies that like that's solely what they do is they just find locations and they do everything and then they pay you a percentage of whatever they make for ticket sales or what have you. So I think that it's not something that like we need to recreate the wheel here or do it ourselves, but we need to like try to promote ourselves as this is a facility that you can utilize for these things. But I thought that was the conversation or the initial thought for the CSC was that it wasn't the hockey arena, it was a sports complex, it was a complex that we could utilize for other things, so I'd really like to see that.
That's what the whole thing was sold on, so
Yeah.
the taxpayers would buy into it,
Right,
you know? So I mean.
and we're really just not
After
pursuing
we've
that.
got it, we haven't seen a lot done with it, so that's kind of my frustration. It's really been less of a community center over the years than it's been, than it should be, so that was the whole idea from me, getting the marketing person to help get some events in there.
So Jeff, if we could maybe reevaluate that with your staff and see where that can fit, that'd be great.
I have a note.
Are we gonna have a budgetary discussion on the marketing?
That will be incorporated within the economic development.
Will that be the next meeting then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So is that next budget meeting going to be like the last one we need to do before September 30th?
That is the plan.
Okay, all right. All right, thanks, Jake.
Another big item, just going down to the rink, we are looking at, I got a couple quotes looking at painting the exterior of the CSC. And along with that, the sealant that's in between the cement out there is fading away, it's picking apart, it's not there. And not in all spots, but some spots, so, and then looking at, also putting in 5/8 inch glass start with one rink on the back. I've been going, the last couple of years, I've been going through a lot of glass because when you have high school and you have college that need to be on the back rinks for practice and stuff, they tend to break the 1/2 inch glass blocks. So looking at redoing one rink and putting all 5/8 inch as thick as we can go glass, just like the event rink. So that number is in there for a CIP, other improvements. And the number that you see is also a 15% increase. I talked to the companies that would be doing this and I asked them about, being that it's in 2025, if 15% would be enough to cover the quote that you gave me this year, and they said correct, so that's why, it's a little bit higher.
So when you do the glass, is that glass all the way around?
Yeah,
Is it possible to save some money and just do the glass on the, behind the nets?
yeah, yep, for sure, I could definitely do that, I looked at, you know, and actually,
Because the glass on the sides, they don't get much impact other than,
no, and I take that back, that's not for glass all the way around, that is glass just specifically for, the ends.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's just specifically for the ends, so that would not be all the way around. It'd still be 1/2 inch along the sides and then 5/8 on both ends,
right?
sorry about that.
Yeah, tell the high school and the college, you don't score goals hitting the glass, it's over the net.
And that glass breaks and it's in 10-minute pieces.
And then it's hard to see on the ice.
So I know last year, I just had a question about this, or not a question, but just the Golden Link, they did, Jeff come in and ask for 97,000 this year. So we did put it in the preliminary budget for everyone to see.
Yeah. And for, this is where the line item was, so this is where we put it. I did speak to Tamara at the Golden Link today, along with their request as part of the procedure, they did include a budget, an annual budget for 2025. However, the budget appeared to be incomplete. And I had some questions. I spoke with her today. She's gonna be forwarding me a more complete budget. Because it appears, as written, it appears like their need may not be as great as it is. But I also know that nonprofit organizations rarely have less need. So before we come to a final determination, I wanted to, again, play it on the safe side with the higher ask as
So it
opposed
appears in the year that we challenged them last year on on their request last year, they didn't, because we're basically funding
Yeah.
the whole.
I thought my understanding was that for any community thing, we were gonna cap the dollar amount we would be giving them, and that we told them that last year
Yeah.
with the understanding that they would need to find other opportunities to fundraise or generate revenue. Specifically, we had talked about, like, their food service seemed to be very low cost, but almost to the point that it wasn't covering cost, when we did initially look at their budget. So I'm just curious where that came out in the conversation, because that was a conversation we had last year.
What did we decide on the cap
Like
last year?
25?
What?
Was it 25?
I don't know if it was that.
I can't recall, but it was significantly less, and we shared that with them last year, knowing that they had a full year to try to find other opportunities for revenue and grants funding.
What's that?
It was 97 last year.
97.
Did cap it.
Yeah, last year they asked for 97, this year's request, they specifically requested the same amount as last year at 97,000.
And the year before that, it was like 70 something.
Yeah. And it-
2022 is 91,000, 91,980 is the actual, and then prior to that, 21 was the
20,
last
yeah.
time.
And I believe there was like some very specific purchases they had to make, like a commercial fridge or something like that, but it was like very specific. If we could go back and look at the notes on that, but I know that we had talked at CAP and we had had that conversation with them.
Currently, at their $97,000 ask, we are funding approximately 29 to 30% of their total budget.
Yeah.
So,
You're kind of, you're not the liaison?
No.
That would be
Mr. Griggs.
Mr. Briggs.
Do you have any input?
I know they've gotten quite a few grants and stuff like that. And, I believe, I had, them send over a budget to look at. What it was, kinda said it's the same thing as far as that it wasn't likely to be 97,000 because we had stated.
And I think, Jeff, we had decided on what that total dollar amount for the community fund would be.
Yeah, it was
based on what we
it
thought
was
we
a
would
total
give.
for all of them, right? Yeah.
So,
So this isn't coming from the community fund, it's coming directly from Park and Rec's budget?
so historically, what had happened was that the monies that were, the reason they're there and not in this community fund initially, and I think this really had to just do with us having to move it over, was the justification for giving this money was that since a lot of the rec and park stuff was really focused on younger youth or like the mid-range age residents, that this was like Crookston's opportunity to share kind of, this is something that's very focused on the senior citizens of the town. And so that was the initial reason why it was under Park and Rec, though that conversation had been had about moving it over to this community fund, which is why we initially talked last year about having that solid, this is how much money that we're allocating to those who request funding from us.
So where do we have the budget for the community fund?
Was that under admin? Can't remember what that was under.
I believe that is under council.
Yep, that would make sense.
Council approved budget. Let me do a find and seek because it is not.
There's no proposed budget for 25.
Yeah, please.
I was just waiting. As we continue, we're down to the 45,200s. In every line item for overtime, I've put in some money this year. This year I am anticipating some severe weather. Winter, we had a pretty mild one last year, so I'm just anticipating that we're gonna have, whether it's a wet spring or a wet fall or something, severe winter, just anticipating it. What else? If you go down to the materials at the 0224, we added $4,000 for kind of an operating cost of the campground, and then $10,000 for the porta potties. I've been getting phone calls this summer about looking at adding more porta potties in certain locations of our community, so we budgeted for that. $5,000 for small tools and equipment. We need to update. We have a lot of corded tools. It'd be nice to get some battery operated, so when we go work on a project elsewhere, we could not bring a generator and do all that stuff. So we are kind of in the Stone Age a little bit in that department, so I'd like to look at updating some equipment, tools and things. Safety expense, I'd like to look at getting some jackets for our staff this year and some t-shirts and things like that. Update kind of our old stock. We do have bibs that we wear, so we have to go in the river, things like that, things that have holes in them, and just updating the things that we have. So, travel expense. So the next thing I would like to look at, after talking with the mayor here, we looked at potentially getting a new guard shack at the campground. The one that we have right now is, actually I don't know how old it is, but it is old, and it's on a trailer, so we're looking at potentially building or buying a new guard shack. We put in money to have a nice facility or a nice campground down at Central Park, so we'd like to look at building a new guard shack or looking at something like that, so that would be in our CIP for other improvements.
So that would be something that would have to be removable then?
Yeah, we'd have to, yeah. Unless we can find a different area to put it, but I don't foresee that, you know, we have electricity where it's at now, and it's down the hill, and it's, you know, it's right there when you come in, so it's in a good location, it's just gonna be tough to stay there we don't know the outcome of the river every year, so.
Yeah.
And then the tree fund has not changed, so.
Yeah.
With that's the end of my.
Yeah, the park expense, just for reference, removing the 15,000 in capital, it's a 2.4% increase. And out of that, 2.1% is in wages, which are contractually obligated with the union.
Jake, was there any conversation about redoing the Central Park area for the, what do you call it? For the kayaks and stuff? I know that that had been supposedly, the launch, that had been part of initially the conversation about when we redid Central Park, that we would also redo the launch.
So I know I talked to Renee Matson about that, she's the president of the Red River Corridor. There are funds for that, we could go back to the grant that we got for the campground and make that an actual project.
Okay.
That's as far as I got. I know my guys, along with Chuck's guys, they have been working down there, clearing up mud and just making it the best we can. Would like to look in, I believe, I've been trying to get hold of the RDNR, our contact, haven't been able to get hold of them, but I believe there are some things that we can put in there, like cement. I can't remember what they call it, but you know, they go into the water. We just have to look at that funding and, you know, Renee said that there's money in there every year.
Well, and I know that a lot of the other projects didn't necessarily get done for one reason or another, so I think it would be really nice for us to like really
focus on.
Yeah, and I think that's something even like with Empower Crookston, is really trying to get more people out on the river and making that a lot more user friendly per se, so I'd really like to see something done about that, especially if the funding's available.
Thank the council for their input. Staff and I will be working diligently to put into place the guidance given and present the remaining departments in the next meeting.
All right, thank you, everybody, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.